Several years ago, Andy was sentenced to prison. During his stay, he got along well with the guards and all his fellow inmates. The warden saw that deep down Andy was a good person and made arrangements for Andy to learn a trade while doing his time. After 3 years, Andy was recognized as one of the best carpenters in the local area. Often, he would be given a weekend pass to do odd jobs for the citizens of the community, and he always reported back to prison before Sunday night was over. The warden was thinking of remodeling his kitchen and, in fact, had done much of the work himself. But he lacked the skills to build a set of kitchen cupboards and a large countertop, which he had promised his wife. So he called Andy into his office and asked him to complete the job for him. But, alas, Andy refused. He told the warden, "Gosh, I'd really like to help you, but counterfeiting is what got me into prison in the first place." A woman was in bed with her lover when she heard her husband opening the front door. In a panic, she told her lover, "Hurry, stand in the corner. Don't move until I tell you to. Just shut your eyes and pretend you're a statue." At that moment, her husband walked into the room. "What's this, honey?" he asked. "Oh, it's just a statue," she replied nonchalantly. "The Smiths bought one for their bedroom. I liked it so much, I got one for us, too." They went to sleep, and then around 3 o'clock in the morning, the husband got out of bed, went to the kitchen, and came back with a sandwich and a glass of milk. "Here," he said to the statue. "Eat something. I stood like an idiot at the Smiths for 3 days, and nobody offered me so much as a glass of water." A sign on a restaurant window says, "If you order it and we don't have it, you instantly win $1 million. A man walking by notices the sign and walks in the restaurant and sits down at the table with a smirk on his face. The waiter asks what he will be having, and the man says, "I will have white rhinoceros stew, please." The waiter comes out with a boiling hot bowl of exactly what the man ordered. The man is taken by surprise, but he eats the stew and pays for his very expensive meal. He leaves angrily. The next day he comes back and sits at the table with a smirk on his face again. He tells the waiter, "Today I will have bullet ants stuffed with dolphin meat." The waiter leaves and quickly comes back after a few minutes with exactly what the man ordered. The man, surprised again, eats his meal angrily, pays, and leaves. The next day he comes back and sits at the table and tells the waiter, "Today I will have a lactating mermaid breast sandwich." A few minutes go by and the waiter comes out holding 2 massive duffel bags with the $1 million. The man, overcome with excitement, says, "I knew it! You don't have mermaid breast!" The waiter tells him politely, "We actually have it, sir. It's just that we ran out of bread." A man walks into a bar and orders a drink. The bartender gives the man his drink, and the man asks, "If I show you something crazy, would you let me have free drinks for the rest of the night?" The bartender thinks for a minute and then says, "It would be something spectacular to take that offer." The man leans down and picks up a box and sets it on the bar. He opens the box, and inside is a small piano man who is only 1 foot tall, and beside him a little piano. The piano man starts playing classical music like Beethoven and Chopin. Once he finishes, the bartender is in utter disbelief. He tells the man, "You can have free drinks for the rest of the night, but only if you tell me where you got this." The man says, "In the alleyway behind your bar, there is a genie who is granting free wishes to everyone who wants them." Elated, the bartender heads behind his bar to see if it was true. A few minutes passed, and out of the alleyway erupted a cacophony of quacking. The bartender rushes back into the bar and shuts his door against a wave of thousands of ducks. He manages to secure the door and says to the man, "I think that the genie is hard of hearing because after I asked for $1 million, these ducks appeared by the thousands." The man chuckles and says, "Did you really think I wish for a 12-inch pianist?" A Texan walks into a bar in Ireland and clears his voice to address the crowd of drinkers. He says, "I hear you Irish are damn good drinkers. I'll bet $500 American to anybody in here who can drink 10 pints of Guinness back to back." The room is quiet, and no one takes up the Texan's offer. One man even leaves. 30 minutes later, the same gentleman who left shows back up and taps the Texan on the shoulder. "Is your bet still good?" asks the Irishman. The Texan says yes and asks the bartender to line up 10 pints of Guinness. Immediately, the Irishman tears into the pint glasses, drinking them all back to back. The other patrons cheer as the Texan watches in amazement. The Texan gives the Irishman his money and says, "If you don't mind me asking, where did you go for the past 30 minutes?" The Irishman replies, "Oh, I had to go to the pub down the street to see if I could do it first." A lone cowboy nobody knew walks into a mining town bar. He orders 2 drinks, which he downs slowly. When he was done with his drinks, he paid the bartender and walked out to see that his horse with all his stuff was missing. He turns around, walks back in the bar, pulls his guns from his holster, and shoots them in the air. "Whichever one of you cow-dung stole my horse better have it back by the time I finish my next drink, otherwise I'm going to have to do what I did in Texas, and trust me, I don't want to ever do that again." He walks back to the bar, gets another drink, and slowly drinks it. The people in the bar started murmuring, talking amongst themselves and looking at the stranger with fear in their eyes. The stranger finishes his drink and walks out, and his horse is there where he left it. He got up on it when the bartender and the bar patrons ran out after him. The bartender said, "Mister, we are sorry for what happened, but please tell us what happened in Texas after somebody stole your horse." The stranger looked at him and said, "I had to walk home." A lone cowboy nobody knew walks into a mining town bar. He orders 2 drinks, which he downs slowly. When he was done with his drinks, he paid the bartender and walked out to see that his horse with all his stuff was missing. He turns around, walks back in the bar, pulls his guns from his holster, and shoots them in the air. "Whichever one of you cow-dung stole my horse better have it back by the time I finish my next drink, otherwise I'm going to have to do what I did in Texas, and trust me, I don't want to ever do that again." He walks back to the bar, gets another drink, and slowly drinks it. The people in the bar started murmuring, talking amongst themselves and looking at the stranger with fear in their eyes. The stranger finishes his drink and walks out, and his horse is there where he left it. He got up on it when the bartender and the bar patrons ran out after him. The bartender said, "Mister, we are sorry for what happened, but please tell us what happened in Texas after somebody stole your horse." The stranger looked at him and said, "I had to walk home." A man boards a plane and is surprised to find a parrot strapped into the seat next to him. Once they're in the air, the stewardess comes around and the man politely asks for a coffee. The parrot, on the other hand, squawks, "And get me a bloody whiskey, you moron!" The startled stewardess hesitates, but soon returns with a whiskey for the parrot, forgetting the coffee. The man gently reminds her, but before she can respond, the parrot drains its glass and screeches, "And bring me another whiskey while you're at it, idiot!" Flustered, the stewardess rushes off and returns with another whiskey, but still no coffee. Frustrated, the man decides to take a page from the parrot's book. "I've asked you twice for a coffee, moron. Now get it before I give you a slap." Within seconds, 2 burly air marshals storm in, grab both the man and the parrot, drag them to the emergency exit, and throw them out of the plane. As they plummet through the sky, the parrot turns to the man and says, "You know, for someone who can't fly, you've got a big mouth." A food inspector goes to a restaurant for a health assessment. He asks the owner to try some food, starting with a pizza. The owner calls out the chef, who comes out dressed in a grubby singlet, sweating profusely. "Please make the inspector your best margarita pizza." The chef grabs some dough from the fridge, lifts the singlet, and molds the pizza dough on his stomach to form a round. He then grabs some tomato sauce, smears it with his grubby hand over the pizza dough, and then sprinkles cheese over it. He peels the pizza from his stomach and throws it in the oven. The inspector is appalled, says he's not eating that, and wants to try something else, which must be better or he will shut the owner down. The owner tells the chef, "Make the inspector a burger." The chef goes to the fridge, grabs a handful of beef, puts it under his extended arm in his armpit, pushes his arm down by his side, pulls the burger from under his arm, and flips it onto the griddle. "No more, that's it, I won't even try that. I'm coming back in the morning for breakfast, and if things don't improve, I am revoking your food license and shutting you down." The owner apologetically agrees, but says, "If you're coming back for breakfast, I would recommend you don't try the bagels." Brad's first year away at university was a lot of partying and paying for his friends. He quickly runs out of money. His father would not be pleased with his wastefulness, so Brad sends him a message stating he has a professor that can teach his father's dog how to read and write for a bargain price. The father can't believe the advances the school has made, but also can't pass up the opportunity. Brad soon receives his dog and the money, but promptly burns through it again. This time, his father has sent another message that another professor of Brad's can teach the dog to talk to people for more money. Brad again receives the money. Soon the father is bragging to everyone in town about how when Brad comes home with the dog can not only read and write, but can also converse with everyone. Word spreads, and at the end of the school year, a huge throng of people are waiting to see the dog arrive at the train station. However, neither Brad nor the dog is to be seen. The father looks off at the caboose and sees a slumped-shouldered Brad slowly get off the train. The father runs to greet his son and asks where the dog is. Between whimpers, Brad tells him that while they were riding the train back home, the dog put down the newspaper he was reading and said, "Brad, I'm so glad I can speak, because now I want to tell your mother what I saw your father and the housekeeper doing when she wasn't around." Brad told his father, "I got so angry, I grabbed that dog by the neck and threw it off the train. We must have been going 100. There's no way it could have survived." Brad's father grasped him by the shoulders and looked directly into his eyes before saying, "Son, are you sure that lying dog is dead?" Milk. The only cow in a small town in Ireland stopped giving milk. The townfolk found they could buy a cow in Scotland quite cheaply. They brought the cow from Scotland. It was wonderful. It produced lots of milk every day, and everyone was happy. They bought a bull to mate with the cow to get more cows, so they'd never have to worry about their milk supply again. They put the bull in the pasture with the cow, but whenever the bull tried to mount the cow would move away. No matter what approach the bull tried, the cow would move away from the bull, and he was never able to do the deed. The people were very upset and decided to go to the vet, who was very wise, tell him what was happening, and ask his advice. "Whenever the bull tries to mount our cow, she moves away. If he approaches from the back, she moves forward. When he approaches her from the front, she backs off. If he attempts from the one side, she walks away to the other side." The vet rubbed his chin thoughtfully and pondered this before asking, "Did you, by chance, buy this cow in Scotland?" The people were dumbfounded, since no one had ever mentioned that they had brought the cow over from Scotland. "You are truly a wise vet," they said. "How did you know we got the cow from Scotland?" The vet replied with a distant look in his eye, "My wife is from Scotland." A little Catholic boy and a little Protestant girl, both about 4 years old, were growing up in Northern Ireland. Even though Catholics and Protestants didn't generally get along with one another, the two played together often, not understanding why their families said they shouldn't be friends. On one particularly hot day, the two were playing when the little girl said, "'Tis terribly hot today. We should go take a dip in the swimming hole." The little boy replied, "We cannot do that. We do not have our swimming clothes." But the little girl said, "That's all right. We can go swimming in our all-togethers." So, the two went off to the swimming hole, where they each got undressed. At which point, the little girl starts to look at the little boy, head to toe, eyes wide and confused, and the little boy was looking at the little girl, head to toe, jaw wide open with a puzzled look on his face. He then managed to say, "Ma da told me that Catholics and Protestants were different, but I did not think we were that different." A man shows up for work a week late. His boss starts to yell at him, but the man interrupts. "Before you begin, I have a good explanation," the man says. "I can't wait to hear it," the boss exclaims. "I was at a Polish wedding this weekend." Flustered, the boss yells, "What does that have to do with anything?" "Well," the man said, "I won the second prize in the raffle. I had to spend a week fucking the bride." The boss looks at him in bewilderment. "If that was the second prize, what was the first?" he asks. The man replied, "A canned ham." Bert, at 75 years old, always wanted a pair of soft spike golf shoes like Freddie Couples, so seeing some on sale after his round, he bought them, and he was so delighted with his purchase that he decided to wear them home to show the missus. Walking proudly into the house, he sauntered into the kitchen and said to his wife, "Notice anything different about me?" Margaret, at age 73, looked him over and replied, "Nope." Frustrated as all get out, Bert stormed off into the bathroom, undressed, and walked back into the kitchen, completely naked, except for the new golf shoes. Again he asked Margaret, a little louder this time, "Notice anything different now?" Margaret looked up and said in her best deadpan response, "Bert, what's different? It's hanging down today. It was hanging down yesterday, and it'll be hanging down again tomorrow." Furious, Bert yells out, "And do you know why it's hanging down, Margaret?" "Nope. Not a clue," she replied. "It's hanging down because it's looking at my new golf shoes." Without missing a beat, Margaret replies, "Should have bought a new golf hat, Bert." A man goes to a golf course and tells the club pro he's taught a gorilla to play golf. The club pro is understandably skeptical until he glances outside and sees a gorilla holding a golf club. "The way he drives the ball," the man says, mimicking a huge swing. "Just amazing." "I'll believe it when I see it," the pro replies. The man tells the pro, "I'll bet you $50 right now he can beat you." After giving this some thought, the pro decides he could use an easy $50. They shake hands on it, and the three of them head out to the first hole together. The pro tees up first. He winds up and drives the ball almost 300 yards down the fairway. He grins briefly as the man sets a tee and ball for the gorilla. The gorilla approaches the ball and swings, launching a missile right down the center of the fairway over 400 yards. The ball lands on the green 5 yards from the hole. Flabbergasted, the pro is speechless. As they walk down the fairway together, the man says to the pro, "Look, bud, I don't want to waste your time or cause any embarrassment in front of anyone else out here, you know? You want to just slip me the $50, and we'll call it good." Seeing a painful and shameful loss in his immediate future, the pro reluctantly agrees and forks over the money. As they're leaving, the pro says, "Hey, just since I'm curious, how's his putting?" "Oh," the man says, mimicking a huge swing, "just amazing." A recent letter to an agony aunt. "Dear Marjorie, I have never written to you before, but I really need your advice. I have suspected for some time now that my wife has been cheating on me." The usual signs. The phone rings, but if I answer, the caller hangs up. My wife has been going out with the girls a lot recently, although when I ask their names, she always says, "Just some friends from work, you don't know them." I try to stay awake and watch for her when she comes home, but I usually fall asleep. Anyway, I've never broached the subject with my wife. I think deep down I just did not want to know the truth. But last night, she went out again, and I decided to finally check on her around midnight. I hid in the garage behind my golf club so I could get a good view of the whole street when she arrived home from a night out with the girls. When she got out of the car, she was buttoning up her blouse, which was open, and she took her panties out of her purse and slipped them on. It was at that moment, crouching behind my golf clubs, that I noticed a hairline crack where the grip meets the graphite shaft on my tailor-made 460 driver. Is this something I can fix myself, or should I take it back to the golf superstore? Well, a Chinese gentleman came to visit America. He walks by a choir practicing who happen to be warming up before singing a song, and he hears them recite, "Me, me, meme." He thinks, "I'll fit in here." And so he starts saying, "Me, me, meme." He then passes by a restaurant called Forks and Knives, so he starts saying, "Me, me, meme. Forks and knives, forks and knives." He then walks by a candy store called Because He Stole My Lollipop. So he starts saying, "Memameme, forks and knives, because he stole my lollipop." He then passes by a radio that's playing Plug It In, so he starts saying, "Memamema, forks and knives, because he stole my lollipop. Plug it in, plug it in." As it happens, he spots a guy lying dead on the pavement across the street. The police arrive and start asking, "Who killed this man?" The Chinese man replies, "Memameme." "What did you kill him with?" the police ask. "Forks and knives, forks and knives." They then ask him, "Why did you kill him?" Because he stole my lollipop. The police have no choice and arrest the Chinese man, they tell him. We're going to have to put you in the electric chair. He replies, plug it in, plug it in. A faithful old wine taster sadly passes away, and so the winery decides to advertise the role and invites people to attend an interview. A drunkard with a ragged, dirty look comes along to apply for the position. The director of the winery wondered how to send him away. He gave him a glass to drink. The drunk tried it and said, "It's a muscat, 3 years old, grown on a north slope, matured in steel containers. Low grade, but acceptable." "Wow, that's correct," said the boss. "Another glass? This is a Cabernet, 8 years old, from a southwestern slope, oak barrels and matured at 8 degrees. Requires 3 more years for the finest results." "Correct. A third glass? It's a Pinot Blanc champagne, high grade and exclusive," the drunk said calmly. The director was astonished. He winked at his secretary, secretly suggesting something. She left the room and came back in with a glass of urine. The alcoholic tried it. "It's a blonde, 26 years old, 3 months pregnant, and if I don't get the job, I'll name the father." So Count Dracula went on a tour of Europe. Having not had a meal since he'd left the homeland of Transylvania, he was very glad when a town constable knocked on his hotel door and asked the Count to show him his passport. It didn't take Dracula long to grab the policeman and suck every drop of blood out of him. Now Dracula was faced with a problem. How do I dispose of this body? He wondered. The only solution he could come up with was to throw the corpse out the window. I'm so high up they'll never trace the body back to me. Ha ha ha, he cackled. So whoosh out the window went the corpse. It just so happened that right below that window was the customary station of an itinerant street singer. Bang! The singer got hit right on his noggin by the falling body and was knocked unconscious. Back in his hotel room, Dracula was in the mood for dessert, so he rang room service and asked the front desk to send up another town constable. 10 minutes later, the policeman arrived, and Dracula invited him in. As soon as the door shut, Dracula pounced and devoured his fresh and steaming dessert. Again, the Count wondered, how do I get rid of the body? And then thought, well, it worked once, why not again? So out the window went his latest victim. At that moment, the street singer below had just regained consciousness and was wondering what the heck was going on. His consciousness didn't last long, however, as he was instantly knocked out cold by Count Dracula's second victim. Sometime later, the singer woke up and saw that a small crowd had gathered around. As he regained his bearings, one of the onlookers asked, "What's happened here?" "It's terrible," sang the street singer. "Drain cops keep falling on my head." A judge was interviewing a woman regarding her pending divorce and asked, "What are the grounds for your divorce?" She replied, "About 4 acres and a nice little home in the middle of the property with a stream running by." "No," he said. "I mean, what is the foundation of this case?" "It is made of concrete, brick, and mortar," she responded. "I mean," he continued, "what are your relations like?" "I have an aunt and uncle living here in town, and so do my husband's parents." He said, "Do you have a real grudge?" "No," she replied. "We have a 2-car carport and have never really needed one." "Please," he tried again. "Is there any infidelity in your marriage?" "Yes, both my son and daughter have stereo sets. We don't necessarily like the music, but the answer to your questions is yes." "Ma'am, does your husband ever beat you up?" "Yes," she responded. "About twice a week he gets up earlier than I do." Finally, in frustration, the judge asked, "Lady, why do you want a divorce?" "Oh, I don't want a divorce," she replied. "I've never wanted a divorce. My husband does. He said he can't communicate with me." Julie began her job as an elementary school counselor, and she was eager to help. One day during break, she noticed a girl standing by herself on one side of a playing field while the rest of the kids enjoyed a game of soccer at the other. Julie approached and asked if she was all right. The girl said she was. A little while later, however, Julie noticed the girl was in the same spot, still by herself. Approaching again, Julie offered, "Would you like me to be your friend?" The girl hesitated, then said, "Okay," looking at the woman suspiciously. Feeling she was making progress, Julie then asked, "Why are you standing here all alone?" "Because," the little girl said with great exasperation. "I'm the goalkeeper." Upon arriving home, a husband was met at the door by his sobbing wife. Tearfully, she explained, "It's the pharmacist. He insulted me terribly this morning on the phone." Immediately, the husband drove downtown to confront the pharmacist and demand an apology. Before he could say more than a few words, the druggist told him, "Now, just a minute, please listen to my side of it. This morning the alarm failed to go off, so I was late getting up. I went without breakfast and hurried out to the car, just to realize that I locked the house with both house and car keys inside. I had to break a window to get my keys, then driving a little too fast, I got a speeding ticket. Later, about 3 blocks from the store, I had a flat tire. When I got to the store, there was a bunch of people waiting for me to open up. I opened and started waiting on these people, and all the time the darn phone was ringing off the hook," he continued. "Then I had to break a roll of nickels against the cash register drawer to make change, and they spilled all over the floor. I got down on my hands and knees to pick up the nickels. The phone was still ringing. When I came up, I cracked my head on the open cash drawer, which made me stagger back against a showcase with a bunch of perfume bottles on it. All of them hit the floor and broke. Meanwhile, the phone is still ringing with no let-up, and I finally get to answer it. It was your wife. She wanted to know how to use a rectal thermometer, and honest, mister, all I did was tell her." 3 engineers and 3 lawyers were going to a convention. At the train station to the convention, one engineer said, "We can get on the train with only 1 ticket." The other group laughed but did not interject when the first group bought the ticket. When the conductor went around on the train for the tickets, the engineers all walked into the restroom. The conductor walked over, knocked on the door, and a single arm shot out holding the ticket, which the engineer took. The engineers walked back to their seat after with no further problems. The other group applauded their idea. On the way back from the convention, the lawyers announced how they were going to try the same trick as the first. "In that case," one engineer started, "we will travel with no ticket at all." The lawyers laughed at the engineers but did not refuse their idea. On the train back, the conductor walked around to collect tickets, and the lawyers giggled to themselves as they got up and entered the restroom. Waiting a moment, the engineers all got up, walked to the lawyer's restroom and knocked on the door, and an arm shot out with the ticket. The engineers took it and entered the next restroom over. A ridiculously handsome man believed it was his God-given duty to marry the perfect woman and create children of unmatched beauty. Determined, he searched high and low along the East Coast but found no one who met his impossible standards. So he headed west. One day he came across a farmer with 3 breathtakingly gorgeous daughters, so stunning they nearly took his breath away. Excited, he explained his mission to the farmer and asked for permission to marry one of them. The farmer nodded. "Well, you've come to the right place. My girls are all looking to get married. Take your pick." So the man went on a date with the first daughter. The next morning, the farmer asked, "Well, what do you think?" The man hesitated. "She's beautiful, but she's just a wee bit hardly noticeable pigeon-toed." The farmer nodded and suggested he try another daughter. So the man took the second daughter out. The next day, the farmer asked again. The man sighed. "She's stunning, but she's just a little bit barely noticeable, cross-eyed." The farmer shrugged and told him to try the third daughter. The next morning, the man ran up to the farmer beaming. "She's perfect, absolutely perfect. I've found my bride." So they got married right away. Months later, when their baby was born, the man rushed to the nursery, and his jaw dropped in horror. The baby, while cute, had the ugliest face he had ever seen. Panicked, he ran to his father-in-law. "How is this possible? My wife is perfect, and I am perfect. What happened?" The farmer leaned back and sighed. "Well, she was just a wee bit, and not that you could hardly tell pregnant when you met her." There was once a Viking warrior so fierce and powerful that no one dared to challenge him in battle. Seeking a new test of his abilities, he took up a different kind of conquest, staring contests, sailing across Europe. He challenged anyone brave enough to face him, boasting that he had never lost. To make things more interesting, he even promised to give up all the gold he had pillaged to anyone who could defeat him. Word of his challenge spread far and wide, eventually reaching an Irish couple with a very unusual daughter. She had been born without eyelids. Believing she was destined to win, her parents sent a messenger inviting the Viking to Ireland for a showdown. The Viking, eager to prove himself, accepted the challenge and set sail the very next day. When he arrived, the contest began. Hours passed, then days. Nearly a week later, the Viking's eyes remained wide open, unblinking. At last, the exhausted girl admitted defeat, forfeiting the match. Her baffled mother turned to her husband. How in the world did he keep his eyes open for so long, even against someone with no eyelids? Her husband sighed and shook his head. I don't know, dear, but you can lead a Norse to daughter and you still can't make him blink.